Hello, my dear Lana. Welcome to our today's lesson. And in our lesson today, we shall look at vegetation in Eastern Africa. Vegetation in Eastern Africa. Before we look at vegetation in Eastern Africa, let's start by defining the word vegetation. Vegetation refers to plants that grow in a place. Vegetation refers to plants that grow in a given place. And vegetation consists of trees, bushes, grass, and shrubs. The vegetation that grows on its own, it's called natural vegetation. And the vegetation that's planted, it's called planted vegetation. Now, which are the main types of vegetation that we have in Eastern Africa? The main types of vegetation in Eastern Africa include tropical rainforest vegetation, savanna grassland vegetation, desert vegetation, swamp vegetation, mangrove forest vegetation, mountain vegetation, and semi-desert vegetation. Those are the main types of vegetation that we have in Eastern Africa. On your screen, I'm displaying a map of vegetation in Eastern Africa. You can see using the key with tropical rainforest. I hope you can see it. Savanna grassland. Mountain forest and grassland, savanna woodland, the mangrove forest, the desert, and the semi-desert vegetation. Now, we shall look at each of these vegetation in Eastern Africa one at a time. Let's start with savanna vegetation. Savanna vegetation. Savanna vegetation comprises of woodlands and grasslands. Vegetation comprises of scattered acacia, baobab, and sausage trees. Tall elephant grass grows between the trees. Woodland savanna grows closer to the forests. Savanna vegetation covers the largest part of Eastern Africa. That's a key point to note, that savanna vegetation covers the largest part of Eastern Africa. We move on to what we refer to as mountain vegetation. Mountain vegetation is mostly affected by the altitude. Altitude, it's the height above sea level. From the top mountain to the bottom. And on your screen, I'm displaying for you a diagram that's showing the mountain vegetation from top of the mountain to the bottom. And if you look keenly, you can see that the vegetation, the mountain vegetation, it's changing. The layers are changing based on the altitude. That's the height above sea level. Whereby from the sea level to 1,000 meters altitude or to 1,000 meters above sea level, it's savanna. Then from 1,000 meters to 2,000 meters is rainforest. 2,000 meters to 3,000 meters above sea level is bamboo forest. Then 3,000 meters above sea level to 4,000 meters above sea level, it's heath and moraine. Then with 4,000 meters and above, it's snow and bare rock. So that's mountain vegetation. Key to note, it's affected by the height above sea level, which is the altitude. Next, let's look at tropical rainforest. Now, the forests are found in the modified equatorial zone. Trees grow closely together, forming a canopy. Trees found here include ebony, mahogany, ironwood, rosewood, and oak. There is little undergrowth because sunshine does not reach the ground. Next, with desert and semi-desert vegetation. In semi-desert and desert vegetation of Eastern Africa, you'll find thorny trees, patches of tough grass, and scattered cacti trees dominate this area. So in the desert and semi-desert, you will find thorny trees and patches of tough grass and scattered cacti trees in this area. Next, with mangrove vegetation. Mangrove vegetation grows in the brackish salt water along the Indian Ocean in Kenya and Tanzania. Mangrove wood is very hard and stable. Next, with swamp vegetation. Swamp vegetation in Eastern Africa, mostly we shall talk about the Sud in South Sudan. The Sud in South Sudan is the largest swamp in Eastern Africa. The swamp contains papyrus, aquatic grass, and water hyacinth. Other swamps that we have in Eastern Africa include Lorian Swamp, Malagarasi, Kyoga, Lotikipi, and Stephanie. My dear good learner, we've come to the end of this session. I've been proud and glad to have hosted you as you were learning together about the vegetation in Eastern Africa. Much more is on the way, much more to come. Keep on tuned, keep on following for more lessons in social studies. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and goodbye.